to change the computers.
We need to get wired here. Thank you very much, Minister, Deputy Kenny, Chairman, fellow speakers. It's an absolute pleasure as Chief Executive of Bord na Móna, and I've got many colleagues here, including the Chairman, Fergus McArdle, and his wife, for Bord na Móna to be re-engaged in Donegal. I hope you get a chance to go up to our Heartland exhibition. This is the 4th or 5th venue that it has been to. It's amazing the many hundreds of thousands of people, the length and breadth of the country, that have had some association with Bord na Móna over its 75 years. So it's great to be here. It's also great to be re-engaged with Joe Mulholland. I had the pleasure of meeting Joe many years ago in a mutual friend's house, who again I met tonight with his wife, Vincent O'Sullivan and his wife. So it's particularly nice, and it's an honour for me to be here. Speaking about 75 years, and I just want to maybe pose a question. Bord na Móna started out as the Turf Development Board in the early 30s. We're 75 years of age this year. How many corporations that were around 75 years ago, in most of the developed world, I'm talking about Western Europe and North America primarily, how many corporations that were there 75 years ago do you think are still around today? Hands up. Is it 50%? Anybody? 40%? 30? 20? 10? 10? I hear 10. I feel like a good old, much maligned auctioneer here. 10.
5.
5. I'll get you out of your misery. It's less than 5%, about 4%. Not an exact science, this, because obviously there's been a lot of mergers and acquisitions and so forth. But look let's profile some of those, because maybe there's something about those organisations that have got it through 75 years, a world war, and upheavals, economic and other types, technological and so forth. Maybe there's something within the genetic profile of some of those companies that might give us an indicator of what endurance is from a corporate point of view. Here's 3 companies. Nokia, Bord na Móna, couldn't leave out Bord na Móna. A fascinating company based up in Dundalk called Ovell. I don't know if many of you have heard about it. I'm going to tell you about it. Nokia started out in 1865. It was a lumbering company, moved on into paper. It then was sort of merged with a rubber company and got through the next 30 or 40 years looking at the whole telephony market and how it expanded, and started making cables, wires, and then went on into the manufacture of telephone exchanges. Started into the 60s making electrical devices, and then through a number of mergers and acquisitions got into the mobile scene. And mobile started off, we all remember the walkie-talkies and so forth, how things have changed. They were at the front end of all of those major shifts. At the front end. They had a leadership. People who were leading, who were looking out at what's happening down the way. Not all fully engaged with here and now and just seeing where I am with today's profit and today's figure. Of course, they're well on the way to re-establishing themselves. They're going through some difficulties at the moment, but Nokia will make it. Talk about Ovell. Started off in 1934 by Joseph Gardner, the Gardner family, and really I had the pleasure of meeting with them. I got invited to their 75th anniversary. They haven't realised that Bord na Móna was also celebrating 75. Not too many companies in Ireland that have made 75 years. There was very little in the way of industrialisation after the foundation of the state, and companies like Bord na Móna were the first efforts by the state to actually get up and develop an industrial base. Started off making veterinary products, rubs and creams for animals, went on developed a skill set in that, and then moved into human products, into skin products. Started a relationship with UNICEF and with the United Nations, and that was their vehicle to get abroad. And since then, they have developed a whole range of creative skin products and exporting to continents and to all the continents and countries all over the world. So, you'd have to say, and you know, there are thousands of companies within this 4% or 5% of companies that have survived. You would have to say, why have they, and question, why have they been so successful and enduring when 95% haven't? And there's a few simple, absolute lessons that you can learn from virtually all of these companies. Number one, they are always on the lookout and always cognizant of emerging trends. Always knowledgeable that things just do not stay the way they are. Very, very importantly, they have a vision to accommodate these changing trends. Very, very important concept. We heard Sean talking about it. We actually have to look, and when you look at these successful organizations, you see at all stages they were led by leaders who had a vision of a future being, of a future state that they could bring back and relate to all their employees and to their stakeholders and to their communities. And last but not least, they need to have the strength of leadership to effect strategic and cultural change. In fact, the last bit is probably the most difficult. What is the key emerging trend to shape society for the next 100 years? It is the sustainability megatrend. And it is, we're in the early fuzzy front end. Not too many people have actually put a finger on this. Some have. This is the main article in the Harvard Business Review of May, I think it was, just gone by. They talk about the sustainability megatrend. The academics amongst the audience, I'm sure, will like to see some academic rigor coming into some of the thoughts of a business leader. Well, I can tell you I'm studying this very, very closely. And I'm looking at where Bord na Móna's role is in this. And I question where Ireland's role is within this. First of all, let's talk about sustainability. Sean actually mentioned sustainability in a slightly different context. Sustainability is by definition, the capacity to endure. If there's one characteristic about the companies that I mentioned earlier on, is their capacity to endure. They are enduring organizations. But look at this. In 1987, a commission set up by the United Nations, because they were speaking about this sustainability and sustainable development then. A UN commission defined the concept as the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of our future generations to meet their own needs. I think it's a very, very powerful concept. And to think that this was what they were talking about in 1987. It is just beginning to emerge, and whatever that report was, I'm sure has been dusted down, because now, today, it's becoming relevant. And people, certainly within this part of the world, are listening. Sustainability, from a general business point of view, have actually got three planks to it, as I would define it. There is an economic development, a social development, and environmental dimension. Economic development is all about profit. It's all about sustainable, profitable growth. Many of us, and one of the key features of Ireland for the last 15 years, has been economic development. But what about the other elements? They have been glaringly absent. Social development is all about our people, our employees, our customers, our suppliers, the communities that we serve. and the fabric of society that we helped to pull together. Bord-na-Móna 75 years ago, when it was set up on an economic model to try and generate economy, particularly in the Midlands, but also in places like Donegal, Mayo, Kerry and elsewhere. Over time, it became very much a social exercise. And as a result of that, it generated great communities. However, in its own was not sustainable. It cannot or could not carry losses while maintaining large employment and so forth. So again, you need to have it balanced. And environment, you know, I'm not going to talk again or talk about the environmental damage that has been done by the sort of unsustainable development that has gone on throughout the world. But I think that people are beginning to understand the importance of the environment, the absolute requirement that we don't develop at the expense of the environment, and how to manage the environment in a more sustainable manner. So, sustainability is really about balancing these three main areas. So, if you were to look at some of the previous megatrends, and in not too distant past, some of them in slightly more distant past, such as electrification, the quality movement, IT, the rise of the internet we're living through at the moment, convergence of technologies and so forth. You know, you can see from the previous megatrends and disruptions how some of the countries and indeed corporations have dealt with them. And they give us some pointers about how we can deal with this megatrend that is here amongst us and is going to be governing our lives and our economic, social and environmental and economic lives for the next 50 years. First and foremost, and Sean alluded to it, I totally agree, we need to formulate a vision for the future, a vision for value creation. I fully accept what the previous speaker, Sean, has said with regards to here and now. We have so many people, business leaders, political leaders, social leaders, who are so busy down, throwing out water and trying to keep the ship on an even keel. There is nobody up in the crow's nest. It's time to put somebody up into the crow's nest, very, very importantly, and start looking beyond the here and the now. Next point is the execution of that vision. Probably the most difficult. I think has been referred to earlier this week as implementation deficit disorder. I think I heard the term. IDD. This is a new one for me. I'll take it down. I hope there's no patent on it or whatever. But I think it absolutely describes this issue of execution, or what it is about trying to execute something in this country, and we're not alone. The concept of cultural lock-in. This is our inability to change the corporate culture, the national culture, even in the face of clear market threats, or even in where we are. You know, this implementation deficit disorder, it's really about our culture, and as I have said before, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So, there are things we can do. If we accept, from a national corporate point of view, that sustainability is where we need to be, if we can get a vision together, then what should we do about it? It's all about doing old things in new ways. In many ways, that's what we're doing at the moment. That's what we're doing in Bord-na-Móna. We're making energy now from biomass. We're generating energy from other sources other than the traditional coal and oil. In a wider sense, from a sustainable point of view, we're going to have to learn how to deliver a whole range of services, whether it be a health service, an education service, and whatever, in a whole lot of new ways. because we just don't have the cash that we used to have. That's not to say that we don't do it. Of course we do it. But we're going to have to do it in a new way. Doing new things in new ways. This is what I would term the basis of the much spoken about and talked about smart economy. Having consumers take control over their whole environmental space, both energy and otherwise. Whether that be working with utility suppliers and innovation, appliance suppliers such as Glendimplex and whatever. You start getting a little bit of momentum on that from a national point of view. You now have the opportunity to transform your core business and moving on to generating a new business model. What's our role in all of this? Let's assume again that we accept sustainability and this transformation that's going on. And let's assume that we have our visionary leadership in place. What's our role? Our role is to act as an innovator or act as a model for sustainability in practice. Now, what do I mean by that? A lot has been spoken about the green economy and about decarbonising the economy and so forth. Trying to get Ireland to zero emissions is not what this is about. We could get to zero emissions I won't say when, but we could do it. It would probably bring the whole economy, fragile and all as it is, to a complete halt at this point in time. And what would it mean from a global carbon emissions point of view? Less than 0.3% of the global emissions are emanating from Ireland. So it would have absolutely no impact on the globe. Absolutely none. So it's actually 0.15%. So what can we do? I look at some of the real innovators who have embraced sustainability, have come at it from a slightly different angle, but are now generating real economy, real business, differentiated. Their business is growing. Their customers can't get enough of the product because they've got sustainability on their minds as well. Glenisk, I'm sure you have all heard, small family farm in Offaly. Common agricultural policy, cap reform, milk quotas. Suddenly their business model, like that of so many other small farmers, was actually in ruination. What did they decide to do? They decided, you know what, we're going to go organic. There is a market for it. It is difficult. We're going to have the Soil Association coming down telling us we can't use fertilisers, chemicals and so forth. But you know what? We have customers who are telling us if you can do this, we will buy the product and we will pay a premium for the product. Today they have 80 farms scattered throughout Ireland. It's a big issue for the farmers because they have got to change their whole farming culture. They have to change the way that they raise their herd, the way they milk their cows. They have to change their regime, their calving regime and so forth. Tesco or Superquinn or whatever don't want an avalanche of Glenisk in the middle of the summer and then none in the winter. They want it even throughout. But very, very successful. And in there you say to yourself, there's sustainability really in action. What's our role as an innovator in terms of energy? We have some of the best resources, ocean resources as well as wind resources globally. We have some very, very innovative companies, such as WaveBob, who are looking at technologies, leading-edge technologies, still very much in the innovation space. But this is, if we can crack this, we're cracking this not just for Ireland, we're cracking it for the world. I'm always very conscious of, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when the first of the oil crisis took place in the 70s, and all of the Western world were caught, literally the tide had gone out and everybody knew that they weren't wearing much in the way of a swimsuit. Who did something about it? The Danes did something about it. They decided, we can actually generate more of our energy indigenously. We have a great wind regime. And they went on. Today they are leaders in the whole area of wind technology. Environmental waste management, sustainable waste management. You know, Thornton's, a relatively small company based in Dublin, they don't accept waste as a byproduct of, unsustainable consumption that needs to be disposed of, whether it be by landfill or by incineration. They see waste in the philosophy of reduce, reuse, and they're looking at ways of taking that waste and using it as a resource in other areas. Bord na Móna. This is a wastewater treatment facility in Hong Kong. On the roof of it, you see three funny-looking housing units. They are biofilters. They are Bord na Móna biofilters. They clean the air coming from this main municipal wastewater treatment system. They use, as their main biofilter, fish shells. It's a patented technology, a global patent of Bord na Móna. We have about 300 of these installations throughout the world. We've just started to sell them in the United States as of the start of this year, and we have about a half a dozen already up and running. This is sustainability using a waste product for technological advantage. Rutland Water, the largest man-made reservoir in Europe. It covers an area of about 1,000 acres. It's a partnership between Leicestershire and Rutland Wildlife Trust and Anglian Water. It's the main reservoir for Lincolnshire and for Leicestershire and for the North London region. While it's owned by Anglian Water, they cannot do anything without getting permission from English Nature. They have the largest inland sailing school in Britain. They have the largest inland managed fishery in Britain. It generates about 300 jobs just in that area alone on the ecotourist side. This is a plan that the Department of Environment and Dublin City Council have for trying to generate a sustainable water supply for Ireland into the next 50 years, where they're talking and looking at taking excess water from the Shannon region, storing it in a massive reservoir in the Midlands and disseminating it to every county in the Midlands, all of which are short of water. From a foreign direct investment, Sean was speaking about, what is becoming very, very clear is much higher up on the Richter scheme of decision-making in terms of foreign companies coming to decide where they're going to invest. Water and sustainably produced water, energy and sustainably produced energy is now up there as much as corporation tax or anything else. This is a real opportunity going forward. However, there is always a but. Alignment. The problem is not about getting the innovative thoughts into your mind, if you like. It's really as much about getting the old ones out. Our financial models need to be aligned with this overarching vision. Our corporate personal taxation, corporate taxes in its own right is not an end in itself. It's not sustainable. We need to get our incentives aligned to this sustainable vision. Our policies with regards to refit, Food Harvest 2020, it was published last week. It was a litany of, we could, we should. There was nothing about we will. There was no alignment with anything else from a national corporate vision of where Ireland sees itself in the next 20, 30 or 50 years. Now, I'm not criticising them for doing that. I'm trying to explain the need for having this overarching vision. And obviously, with the eminent politicians, we have the Minister, who's very visionary, and Deputy Kenny, and others in the audience. I think that, I agree with Sean, we're going to have to try and get a new type of politic going. A new way. There's been a lot of talk here earlier on this week about reforming the political system. Ireland can lead the way. We have led the way in the past. We were the first to introduce a smoking ban. It really put us on the map internationally because most countries, like Ireland, didn't think that this could be done. Ireland did it, implemented it. In fairness to Micheál Martin, it's one of the great achievements of a politician in this country over the last 20 years. We were the first to introduce a plastic bag ban. Again, people thought it couldn't be done. I had the pleasure, and I know when she was visiting Ireland recently, of meeting Christina Johnson, who's the US Under-Secretary of State for Energy, a most remarkable individual, a lady who's part of the Obama administration, who's got a very, very strong appreciation of Ireland, studied in Ireland for 2 years, is an engineer herself, and she sees this in terms of Ireland's role going forward. We can be the leader. They need a role model. They need somebody who's able to do a retrofitting of houses on some kind of a scale that they can use as a template for introducing into the United States. Many multinationals, the likes of Cadbury's, and I know from my years in the food industry, Cadbury's use Ireland. Some of their greatest successes have been using Ireland as the innovative centre and the test centre for rollout and international rollout. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll finish with Bord na Móna and our statement about sustainability. Thank you very much.
Nature. Quite simply our greatest resource. And as time is rapidly teaching us, one that needs our protection and respect more than ever. So what if we took a new look at our relationship with nature and how we manage our natural resources? What if we made a new contract with nature? And what if we used this contract as a blueprint for tomorrow to help minimize our impact on future generations and mark the beginning of our transition to greater sustainability? At the heart of this contract is a commitment to a low-carbon world and how we have to change to achieve it. So what are we going to do? Well, we're not opening any more bogs and have already started to mix the peat going to the power plants with sustainable biomass. We've invested heavily in other renewable energy through our wind farms and are committed to the development of eco-friendly heating solutions. We're continuously reducing the amount of waste going to landfill by investing in technologies to accelerate alternative reuse of the resource, as well as developing technologies dedicated to providing cleaner air and water. We're also looking at what nature can teach us about the value of coexistence, or to put it another way, how different areas of our business can work together. So recovery and treatment of green waste provides us with sustainable garden care products, and our land resource offers us opportunities to develop ecotourism and biodiversity initiatives. Ultimately, we aim to become Ireland's largest integrated and innovative provider of clean air, clean water and clean energy. So that's our new contract with nature. So simple, so natural, so necessary for our future.